Well, welcome everybody. I'm super excited for this workshop. I know it's something that I wish I had when I was definitely searching for a chief of staff role and hoping to refresh my resume and not knowing, the first place to start. So welcome. If we haven't met yet, I'm Clara. I'm the founder of Ask a Chief of Staff. And today on the call with me, I have Shaina, who is a former chief of staff herself, as well as the founder of Hello Generalist. Shaina is the founder of a brand new startup called Hello Generalist, as we just mentioned, where she's matching top operators to startups who could definitely use some part-time help. You can start or grow your freelance career alongside other generalists from Yelp, BCG, Box, and even more. So take a look at hellogeneralist.com and you can apply to their network. Prior to starting this company, Shaina was a chief of staff and senior director at Yelp Restaurants inside the publicly traded Yelp, which I'm sure many of you have heard of before. And then before that, she was an executive at a VC-backed company called Choose, starting at their seed stage all the way through their acquisition post-Series C. So Shaina is an expert in what she is doing. I'm so excited. Shaina met, and we think we've known each other for well over a year at this point.
Yeah.
And she's always been a great sounding board advisor to me and mentor. And so I'm so excited that she's going to be sharing all of her thoughts around building an incredible chief of staff resume and how to best showcase your skills and talents so that you can land that role. So without further ado, Shaina, please take it away.
Clara, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad you're all here. And you've gotten started in the chat with this already, kind of orienting me about aspiring or current. But I'd love for you to go a little bit deeper. What actually brings you here today? Here's some things I'm expecting to hear. I'm expecting to hear things like chief of staff job descriptions are absolutely awful. Where do I even start? Everyone says the chief of staff role is all uniquely different. How do I start positioning myself? Other things I'm expecting to hear is my resume is the hot mess express. Help, what do I do? So let's see, coming through in the chat, Sari says, I don't know how to quantify what I do in the way that works in a resume. That's a great question. I'm going to offer you some suggestions. Scott is talking about how do I transition from my current job and start to look for a COS role. So how do I position non-COS skills to the COS job? David affirming like the descriptions are actually terrible. So many copy pastes. Yes, we're going to get into all of this. Today will be an active working session. So my suggestion to you is to open a doc or grab a piece of paper. I'll have some prompts for you to work through. And also pull up your resume. You can start to make comments for yourself on that resume with what you think you might want to add or change based on what we talk about. So as you're doing that, I'll tell you more about myself. Clara named it. I'm the new founder of Hello Generalist. I'll tell you all about that in a minute. And I come to this new journey with 15 years leading marketplaces from seed to scale. That is me in my absolute happy place, clearly. I'm in the sun. I'm on someone else's boat. I'm in the middle of the San Francisco Bay, just loving life in a moment that is not raining like it is right now. A little more about me still. You can find me on LinkedIn. There's my email, so you can send me a note directly. Like Clara said, coming into this, I was most recently chief of staff at Yelp Restaurants. We were a 200-person mini SaaS org inside of Yelp. We build products like Yelp Waitlist and Yelp Reservations that you've probably seen. And prior, I had this amazing journey seeing VC-backed Choose from its seed stage all the way to its acquisition. I got to do some really cool stuff, build their marketplace supply team from scratch, build the delivery operations team, and then lead market expansion. Two things I'm really proud of. Our model for profitability came out of my team, which is really cool. And I got to lead launch for all 5 of our US markets that we expanded to. Just a little bit more still, I coach emerging chiefs of staff as they're starting new jobs. I'm a mentor for First Round Capital, and I'm also really passionate about helping startups grow, especially in the marketplace and SaaS spaces. So I'm a former mentor. Lastly, and then I'll stop talking about myself, do not be fooled by the fancy stuff at Yelp and Choose. My journey into these tech roles and into this chief of staff role is as windy as you get. My story includes food trucks and sailboats and tour buses. I love helping others get into technology roles. And I love talking about this generalist journey into tech. So I'm coming to you today with the perspective of having worked at both a public company as well as a growing startup. And that's really what's informing a lot of my work here at Hello Generalist. So this is what really brings me here today. I am 1 week and 1 day into launching this company or making it live. So I'm very new at this, but what I'm building is a platform for generalists to better showcase their skills and get jobs from it. I think the traditional resume format and LinkedIn, they kind of suck for communicating your story. And I care so much about this that I'm starting a whole platform to help people do it. So if you're asking yourself, like, what is a generalist? Well, likely you are. Generalists come from a wide range of backgrounds, often from a seemingly disjointed career story, but that broad perspective makes them super valuable to organizations. And the chief of staff role is a classic generalist title. Founders have a bunch of things they need to get done, and the chief of staff often centralizes it under one person. So, what I'm building here at Hello Generalist, I'm building a better version of the LinkedIn profile tailored for generalists. And I'm bringing this data to recruiters and hiring managers who would have a tough time finding you otherwise. So that's all to say, I've been spending a lot of my time thinking about resumes, how to position yourself, and what hiring managers are looking for. I'll leave my pitch there for now, but you guys can stay on at the end if you want to talk more about it with me. So that brings us to today's agenda. I'm going to give you two main topics here. The first is really my theory for what the generalist resume looks like. And then we have 3 wildly brave, super humble volunteers who we're going to go through their resumes live on the phone. And then at the end, if you want to stay around, I'll give you some more shameless plugs. Okay, first topic, the generalist resume. Let's get into it. In the chat, I would love to hear your guess for how much time does a recruiter spend on each resume? About how much time do they spend? All right, I'm seeing everything from like 5 minutes to 20 seconds. Yeah, some really good guesses in there. Are you ready? Drum roll for the actual result. 6 to 7 seconds. 6 to 7 seconds. A bunch of eye tracking studies have found that recruiters spend 6 to 7 seconds per resume screen. And I've got to break it to you, these chief of staff roles are the hottest roles out there. So recruiters are getting hundreds of applications, which means they're probably giving it a little less time still. It's hard to comprehend. So this brings me to my first reflection point for you. What we're going to do is you're going to open your resume. I'm going to set a timer for 6 seconds. You're going to close your eyes. I'm going to tell you to open your eyes. You're going to look at it for 6 seconds and you're going to reflect on what happens in those 6 seconds. So pull up your resume. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And then as I hit the timer, I'll give you a 3, 2, 1, open your eyes. So if your resume is open, go ahead and close your eyes. Close your eyes. And I'm going to give you a countdown in time for 6 seconds. Ready? After 3, 2, 1, you'll open your eyes. Here we go. 3, 2, 1, open your eyes. That's it. That's it. So, first point of reflection for you. What happened when you opened your eyes? You're the most familiar with your resume. What did your eyes get drawn toward visually? Have you made it easy for someone to gather really clear summary information about you? Is it clear what you're really great at? David, it's disturbing how short it actually feels. Totally right. You're totally right. So that's a great reflection. So, okay. So if 6 to 7 seconds is really all this is being used for. What is it actually good for then? Drop it in the chat. What do you think this is actually good for? Your impressions, first impressions, companies and titles, that's interesting. Eye-catching, the wow factor, I call that sparkle. Keywords, I also talk about keywords. Piquing interest, you are nailing it. Your resume is your marketing tool. And what do really great marketers do? Well, they get you to the relevant stuff right away. It positions you and shows off your most unique, most relevant selling points. And they do that to a very specific audience. So what we end up here are the building blocks for what we want to unpack. Who the audience is, how you pick out your most unique selling points, and how you display it so that it catches you. So these are the things we're going to talk about. I also like to think about what a resume is not. I see this a lot. I see memoir writing resumes. They're beautiful literate pieces. I want to publish them in books, but they do nothing for me in 6 seconds. It's also not the same as prepping for a performance review where you want to capture everything great that you've done. That's not helpful for the 6-second role. And it's also not the time to use your fancy corporate speak. We're going to talk today a lot about what I call the mom test. If I were to read this stuff out loud to my mom, would she think an alien has inhabited my body, or would she understand what I'm trying to say? Resumes are not the time to try to impress and confuse. Okay, so here's my offering. Here's what we're going to go through. I think the generalist resume has four components or 4 points of reflection for you to think about. Let's go through one by one. This is a great time to start to have your blank sheet of paper ready. The first reflection point here is about deciding who your audience is. You've already called it out. Chief of staff job descriptions tend to not tell you too much. They're really hard to scope. Founders don't often know what they want, but you can still pull out some common elements. So what I've done here is I've pulled out some quotes from a bunch of early stage startup chief of staff roles. Let's look at some stuff here. Highly entrepreneurial, comfort in ambiguity, big picture thinking, tactical execution. Okay, here's another one. Early venture-backed, early stage startup experience. They want you to have seen it before. Get smart about our industry, which often is new. Have a nothing is beneath me mentality. You probably get the feeling that, generally speaking, early stage startups really value this generalist acumen. They want a deep mission and personal alignment here, and they want builders. As you get much more later stage, let's look at some established company job descriptions. 10 years experience in either management consulting, finance, operations, strategy, financial and reporting skills, experience with contracts and budgeting, complex ideas in an actionable manner. You get where I'm going with this. Big companies value proven results. They value seniority. They value big company experiences here. So when you're thinking about positioning yourself for startups versus big companies, let's try to sum it up. So what startups want is that they want a chief of staff to be able to build from scratch without a lot of money. They want you to do whatever it takes. And they want strong business acumen, but they don't want the fancy layers on top of it. It's apolitical. And so what you need to show is deep mission alignment, entrepreneurial thinking, and what I call plain spokenness. It's mom test stuff. At bigger companies, what they're looking for is proven experience across many years. Really, you're going to be doing financial and operating work at scale. And so what you need to show, you need to show some sparkle. There's some markers of success, awards, brand names, testimonials, case studies, real professional leadership qualities. And across both, really, this chief of staff role is a future leader for their company. So you need to show up regardless of stage, showing how and why a business works. you have business acumen, you have some analytical horsepower. And this last point here is a real truth that you're an elite standout candidate. These roles are not, there's not 50 of them available at a company. There's usually one, maybe 2 to 3. So you are an elite standout candidate. Okay, so after that section, I hope you can probably start to map yourself on this spectrum. You want to be thinking about where you have the most to offer and where you could see yourself being the most competitive. And from there, you can start to map out the traits that they're looking for in your resume. So that's audience. Now this brings us to what I call keywords. I want to offer you keywords across 4 categories here. And really the point behind this is like recruiters in general are usually pretty well informed about top performing tech companies, especially they're aware of who their competitors are. But it's unlikely that they know about every company on the planet, right? So you need to give them keywords about how to think about the company you worked for so they can draw comparisons. Here's 4 ways you could consider using keywords. The first is by industry. For every company you've worked for, make sure that the industry that company operates in is on there. Here's some examples. The second is business model. There's a bunch of common business model practices out there. Where does this company or this department that you worked for, where do they sit in their business model? Particularly for people who come from startups, help orienting your recruiter to what the funding environment was where you worked there. So seed, Series A, I was there from seed to Series C. I work for a public company. I work for a bootstrapped company that was profitable. All of these things are really helpful indicators. And lastly, total years work experience. This really helps level you in terms of how much of the movie you've seen. And so what you can start to do with this, I think, is really interesting. You can start to take all those categories and put them together in a sentence or 2. This you can consider as a great start to your header. So here's one. I have over 10 years experience leading marketing and finance for B2B marketplaces in their seed and Series A through C rounds. It's a bit of a mouthful, but that is a great summary. Here we go. I lead technical ops at mid to late stage e-com companies in restaurant tech, consumer goods, and med tech spaces. I'm a 15 plus year, I've been in internal operations for 15 plus years for early stage SaaS, ed tech, and D2C companies. Cool summary for a generalist. So I'll leave it there for a minute just to take a look. I like these sentences as headers. I think this type of summary easily replaces what I see some people do, which is a paragraph header at the top of their resume. 6-second rule, that paragraph header is useless. Instead, keywords strung together are much more helpful. Okay, shiny skill sets. Up next, we want to take you as a generalist. You're good at tons of things. We want to be able to pull out the things that are most impressive, most relevant, and we want to show them off in a results-oriented way. That is opposed to a descriptive way of what the skill set is. Instead, I want to help you see the results that you brought. So the prompt that I like to give for this is to ask yourself, what are my top 3 biggest professional accomplishments? What am I most proud of? And go forward and list them out in really plain English. Here's what I consider from my own career. I created Yelp Restaurants exec operating cadence. That alone is a great start. So what I like to do is list out as many as possible. Sometimes start with a list of 10 and then start to cut it down to 2 or 3 that I really want to work with. The point here is to name them in really plain English, no jargon, no fancy corporate speak, and then pick out the ones that you think are going to be most relevant for that audience you're applying for. If I'm going for a startup, I want to pick things that show me as scrappy, and entrepreneurial. If I'm going for a larger company, I want to show proof points and competency. And so once you've got your list down, you can really start to pick them apart. And I want to offer you this format to pick them apart. I'm going to play with this first one here. My format is problem, what I did, results, and skill sets. Problem. The problem here that I was facing was that my team needed a new way to operate because COVID totally wrecked our sales, selling to restaurants, and was destroying our 12,000 restaurant customers. So what I did, I led deep strategy work and I reinvented goal setting, project planning, and internal communications. I might go deeper there and say, we had a new operating calendar, a new executive team schedule, a senior leadership team schedule, a new company-wide planning process. But the result was that our team had extreme clarity on the choices we wanted them to make. And Yelp Restaurants got to grow in market share during COVID while our competitors shrunk. That's a cool result. And here's the skill sets that went into that. Facilitating strategy, financial planning, cool stuff like this. Think about now the difference on your resume between I served our executive team and something framed up like this that really gives great context. So what you have from this is like, call it a mini case study to weave into your resume. I'll show you how at the end of this. But the question I often get is, okay, that's a lot of work. And two, I'm good at so many things that are relevant. How do I show all of the things that I'm great at? Oh, you know what? I'm skipping ahead here. A great way, what we're going to do is we're going to take this first case study, getting confused on my slides, take this first case study and we're going to simplify it down even a little bit more. A way to simplify that is another really popular format. This is used in the consulting world. I helped blank do blank so that blank. And so that last case study that we went through, another way to think about it, we're combining keywords and this results-oriented framework is, I helped Yelp Restaurants, which is a B2B SaaS marketplace, a public company, and a 200-person team, we built a really strong executive team with an operating cadence and a company-wide planning process so that we focused on the most important goals and we grew market share. That's pretty cool. It's giving your recruiter the way to zoom right into what actually happened. And this is also a great example of passing the mom test. If I read this to my mom, she might not get like the B2B SaaS thing, but she'd totally understand everything else. It's plain English. It makes sense. It's in my voice. And why that's important is as a chief of staff, you're talking with high-level executives who don't have time to cut through what you're trying to say. They value plain spoken, frank observations, and communication like a normal human. It's a shift from how I think some people think senior executives want to operate. Yeah, and really similar to the STAR method. Good call out in the chat. Okay, so now we're going to move on to all the other things that you're really great at and you need a way to display. I like this framework. Name the skill, the actual skill, and then give the proof. Here's some examples of what I mean. This is my background. My skill, recruitment. Recruitment is not my shiniest skill, but I've done so much of it and I like it. Recruitment, I've hired over 200 people in these roles, in this context. Growth strategy, not my shiniest skill, but I love it and I'm great at it. And here's an example of how I went about doing it. And I have deep restaurant knowledge. Here's why I'm proven at that restaurant knowledge. So you can think about using this framework for skill sets, for subject area knowledge. Yeah, Eva is right to call out statistics, some numbers in here to really show that I'm not just kind of like fluttering over a buzzword. No, like I really have done this stuff. Here you go. Like I want to show you. Last up, The sparkle. This is what I call ways to really seal the deal. And why this is important, again, that chief of staff role, it's an elite role. You're a future leader. You're an example for others at the company. So we want to pull together some sparkle to really make sure that people see you as an elite candidate. So here's some ways to seal a deal. First are what I call punchy points. They're braggy statements about the most impressive things about you. Maybe they're not skill set oriented, but they're awards, they're press, they're big accomplishments. For me, like my work's been in the New York Times and TechCrunch. And one time when I was 20, I was on the Food Network. I'm putting that right at the top of my resume. Things like launched 5 markets within a year. That's crazy. That's punchy. That's exciting to read. It's making others think like, ooh, this is a sparkly candidate. You've definitely got some punchy points in your resume. The second is testimonials. It can be a little squirmy to put testimonials on your resume, but I think they're great for cover letters. Brand names. We all have some sort of association with a brand name, whether they were a client of ours, some sort of press you've been in, a company you've worked for. Pull them up, bring them up to the top. Let's get that 6-second rule in effect where you're highlighting those brand names you're associated with. And then finally, more social proof. More and more, I see chiefs of staff with podcast interviews or online writing or videos you've recorded. This is a great place to insert those, share them, let people see that you're a top candidate. Okay, lastly here, before we go to some live examples, I want to show you how you could bring this all together. Here's a really trimmed down version of a traditional resume format. You'll note that it has 3 sections. A header section, a work history section, and what I call other notable information. Let's break it down. So in that header section, I really like to use those keywords and that I help X do Y, so that Z statement. I like that right at the top to orient everyone down into here. I also like this top header place for those punchy points. Again, 6-second rule right off the bat. We want to catch people's attention. Under work history, take a look what I did here. This is an example of like, pretend this is one role in one company I worked for. Right under that, let's say chief of staff, Yelp Restaurants. Right under that, that industry, business model, funding, overview of what you did. Give a summary line, help them understand what that company is all about, help them understand the environment, the business model. It's a really helpful way for recruiters to draw patterns. And this is also a great place to use those 2 skill set frameworks. Let's see, I don't know if you can see my mouse here, but that impressive skill set line, that's a great place to insert your mini trim down case study. And that name the skill plus proof is another way just to fill out the rest of results-oriented work. Down at the bottom, other notable information. It's a great place to put memberships, awards, other things that you do, links to writing, videos. This is similarly, how you might use your cover letter to integrate these things. I'll point you to this bullet point here where I really like when people use cover letters to integrate those really clear case studies on their top skill sets, those memberships and awards, links to writing. So this is another really great way to integrate in with your case study. However, I come from the opinion that resumes are a really tough thing to put together for chief of staff, which is why I've started Hello Generalist. So this is a mock-up of what's going into the Hello Generalist profile. You can see here, it's a visual way to show your header, your skill sets, some experience data, and those mini case studies. These are all mock-ups, so don't hold me to them as a week-old company, but you get an idea of where I'm going with this, to where this data is then structured in a database format so others can search for you accordingly. So that's a preview of how I'm starting to think about this whole world.
So I have a couple of questions here. I know we have about 5 minutes, so I'm going to try and keep them quick, and I'll see if Shaina wants to spend a little bit of time. Maybe we can do this async to send out in an email afterwards. One question. So a lot of the tips that you mentioned with the shiny, punchy headlines, with the showcasing your skills, does this help beat the ATS at all? I know this is a common question, but do you have any experience with like ATS parsing and anything that would help kind of get you to the top or maybe highlight your resume even more?
You know, I'm not an expert on it, and there's so much content online about how to beat the ATS. I could probably dig up a couple really good resources, but generally these keywords, yes, are really helpful. Even I'll tell you, even at Yelp, big public company, there's not a lot of keyword scanning in place. It's still done with humans looking through resumes and data. So I don't know enough about to give super great advice, but I think the general word out there is the more that you can reference skill sets mentioned in the job description, talk about why you're proven at them, the better of a match that, you know, if an ATS is scraping data, better of a match you'll be. Those high level category keywords, funding model and business model, that's also a good way to get yourself in there too. And my perspective, again, is outside of the ATS, you're wanting a human recruiter to build commonalities with the role they're hiring for in your background. And it's hard with generalist roles. Ops manager means 1,000 different things. So you want to clue them in to commonalities between where you've been and what you've done and their roles.
Absolutely. And I'll try to dig up some resources too. I remember seeing an article here or there on how to quote unquote game the ATS, and I'll see if I can pull that up and share that in our follow-up email. You mentioned some stuff about qualifications like the Six Sigma belts and things like that. There's a lot of different kinds of qualifications that you can get online. Would you say put everything on there, highlight a couple? What's the kind of best way to highlight, or maybe what are some of the more reputable certifications that you would recommend for chief of staff or generalist type resumes?
So the first reflection point is think about your audience, big companies versus startups, and what kind of qualifications are going to make you elite. If I'm applying for a public company chief of staff role, I want to show really well-known brand name certifications that are probably not startup driven certifications. If I'm applying for a startup, those are still nice, but the ability to show like where you've stood out uniquely, I think is more interesting. Awards, memberships, affiliations. I think that's a little more interesting. I've hired people in the past who were like, you know, things that stood out to me were like, I was the swim team captain at a club, or like I started the biggest online community for Roblox fans. Like, cool. That shows you can like really put something together without a lot of money or direction. That's great for a startup versus Six Sigma certification. Startups care about that too, but big companies will really appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So take that general lens.
Yeah, I'll just +1 to everything that you said. And I know that it can be time consuming, but each job description, you're going to want to alter some of those key punchy words, you know, to make sure that it really does stand out. And you are kind of one-to-oneing, if you will, the job that you're applying for. Because a startup resume, as Shaina has already mentioned, is going to look a little different from a large public Fortune 500. And having kind of different versions, I think, is really helpful in this scenario.
You know, and I would even challenge you to pick a lane. I'm actually a fan of thinking about your uniquely competitive experience and where you're going to shine the most and where you're going to be most successful. I think this approach of like custom resumes for every shape and size of company, so much work for you. And you can probably challenge yourself to get a little more clear on where you're going to thrive, where you're going to offer the most value. Clara, I'll have, that's a counterpoint to
I love that. I totally agree with you. And I think it's super important for people to get very clear, right, on what kind of chief of staff role you're looking for as well. Amazing. Well, that brings us to the top of the hour. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I'm, again, a huge round of applause for Shaina and all of the insights that she shared with us. I think this was so incredible and so helpful. So I hope that you will join us for future workshops. Definitely check out Shaina's new website, hellogeneralist.com. Connect with her on LinkedIn. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your week, and Happy New Year, everyone. We'll see you all soon.